Welcome, weary traveler of time, to another journey into the quiet corners of history. Tonight, we turn our gaze to a period often shrouded in shadows, a time of profound change and unimaginable struggle. We will explore the era of the Black Death, a pandemic that reshaped the very fabric of medieval society. Our aim, as always, is not to alarm or excite, but to offer a detailed, calm exploration of what life was truly like when the world seemed to hold its breath. Settle in, find your comfort, and allow your mind to drift back through the centuries, as we consider the resilience, the fear, and the quiet adaptations of those who lived through history's most devastating natural event. Let the gentle drone of the past lead you towards tranquility. Imagine yourself, if you will, in a small medieval village. Perhaps it's a cluster of thatched roofs nestled beside a winding stream, or a slightly larger town, its cobbled streets still damp from an early morning drizzle. The year is 1348. Life, up until now, has followed a predictable rhythm, the seasonal cycles of planting and harvest, the familiar sounds of animals, the comforting routines of daily chores. But a new sound, a new whisper, begins to ripple through the air, carried on the breeze from distant ports and trading routes. It is the sound of fear. The first signs are often subtle, almost easily dismissed. A neighbor coughs a little too deeply. A distant relative complains of a strange, agonizing ache. Then, the grim confirmation arrives, a visitor from a larger town, perhaps a merchant or a pilgrim, collapsing in the village square, dark swellings appearing in their armpits or groin. These are the buboes, the terrifying hallmarks of the pestilence. Their color deepens to a purplish black, hence the name given to the terrifying disease, the Black Death. As the days turn into weeks, the once familiar landscape of your village begins to transform. The streets become eerily quiet, the usual bustling sounds of daily life replaced by a chilling silence, punctuated only by the occasional mournful wail, or the slow, rhythmic creak of a cart. This is the death cart, making its rounds, collecting the silent forms. The air, once thick with the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, now carries a new, unsettling odor, the sickly sweet smell of decay, mingled with the desperate burning of aromatic herbs believed to ward off the contagion. Fear becomes a constant companion, a heavy cloak draped over every interaction. Trust erodes as suspicion takes root. Who among you is next? Is it the elderly woman who lives alone, her door now mysteriously shut? Is it the young child, playing listlessly in the dirt? Every cough, every shiver, every unexplained ache sends a jolt of terror through the community. People begin to avoid touch, even with loved ones. Hands once clasped in greeting are now held at a distance. Doors are barred, windows are shuttered, and those who can, flee, though often carrying the very disease they desperately seek to escape. The established order begins to fray. Priests, once figures of comfort and guidance, succumb at alarming rates, leaving churches empty and the spiritual solace they offered, tragically absent. The familiar rituals of burial, which once brought a measure of closure, become impossible to maintain. Bodies are interred hastily, often in shallow graves, sometimes in mass pits, without the proper rites, a profound affront to the deeply held religious beliefs of the time. The communal bonds, once so strong in medieval society, are stretched to breaking point under the weight of such pervasive loss. In their desperation, people turn to anything that offers a sliver of hope. Folk remedies, some bizarre, others simply inert, become commonplace. People might try to apply live chickens to their buboes, hoping to draw out the disease. They might consume concoctions of herbs and urine, or engage in frantic flagellation, believing that by punishing themselves, they could appease a wrathful god. The air might be filled with the scent of vinegar, burned juniper, or rosemary, as individuals attempt to purify their homes and their very breath. But these efforts, sadly, are almost always in vain. The daily adaptations are stark. Food supplies become precarious as farmers sicken and die, and trade routes collapse. Water sources, once taken for granted, might become contaminated or untended. The simple act of obtaining a loaf of bread, once routine, now carries the risk of infection. The days are a blur of illness, frantic prayer, and an agonizing watch for the telltale signs on oneself or one's family. Sleep, when it comes, is often fitful, plagued by the terrifying images of suffering and death that surround you. The mental and emotional toll is immense. Grief is not a singular event, it is a constant state. Entire families are wiped out in a matter of days. The very concept of the future, of continuity, is shattered. How do you plan for tomorrow when there may be no tomorrow for you or for anyone you know? The horizon of thought shrinks to the immediate moment, survival. Yet, even amidst such overwhelming darkness, there is a quiet, desperate resilience. Some care for the sick, even knowing the risk. Some find solace in quiet prayer, clinging to their faith. Others simply endure, one day at a time, performing the necessary tasks to stay alive, their senses dulled by exhaustion and grief, their hope a flickering flame against the raging storm. This was the raw, unvarnished reality for countless souls as the Black Death swept through their world, turning the familiar into a landscape of terror and loss. Amidst the widespread flight and despair that characterized the Black Death, there were those who, against all odds, chose to remain. They were not always the celebrated figures of history, but often the humble healers, the dedicated physicians, who felt an obligation, a profound calling, to tend to the suffering, even as death surrounded them. Imagine a man like Master Jean de Venette, a Carmelite friar and chronicler in Paris, who, though not a physician in the formal sense, provided comfort and recorded the grim unfolding of events, offering a window into the resolve of some. Or consider the nameless village doctor, trained in the rudimentary medical knowledge of the time, facing an enemy he could not comprehend. Their training, by modern standards, was woefully inadequate for such a pandemic. Medieval medicine operated on the theory of humors, the belief that the body contained four primary fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, that needed to be in balance. Disease was seen as an imbalance, and the plague, with its swift, devastating onset, defied these established notions. Physicians of the era carried small handbooks, consulted astrological charts, and relied heavily on observation and the limited remedies available to them. Bleeding, purging, and the application of strange poultices were common practices, often doing more harm than good. For the physician who stayed, their daily struggle was immense. Each morning brought new pleas for help, new faces contorted in pain and fear. They would enter homes where entire families lay afflicted, the air heavy with sickness and the scent of fear. The risk of contagion was ever present, a silent killer lurking in every cough, every touch. Many succumbed themselves, their dedication ultimately costing them their lives. Their methods, while not effective against the plague itself, reflected their earnest attempts to provide relief. They might advise patients to avoid fresh air, believing it carried the miasma, the poisonous vapor thought to cause the disease. Instead, they would suggest sealing off rooms, burning aromatic woods like juniper or frankincense to purify the air, or carrying posies of sweet-smelling flowers and herbs. For the buboes, the grotesque swellings, they might apply poultices of clay, dried human excrement, or even live pigeons, cut open and pressed against the inflamed skin, in a desperate attempt to draw out the poison. Some prescribed bloodletting, believing it would release the bad humors from the body, often weakening the already frail patient. Beyond the physical treatments, the physician's role extended to the spiritual and emotional. They were often the last hope, the last comfort for those facing an agonizing end. They would listen to confessions, offer words of solace, and witness countless farewells. Their emotional fortitude must have been extraordinary, to face such unremitting suffering day after day, knowing that their efforts were largely futile in the face of such a relentless adversary. The sight of so much death, the constant stream of grief, would weigh heavily on any soul. Yet they continued. Why? Perhaps it was a profound sense of duty, instilled by their oaths or their faith. Perhaps it was a deep empathy for their fellow human beings. For some, it might have been a quiet form of scientific curiosity, trying to understand the disease, to record its patterns, even as they watched it claim lives. These were the unsung heroes, the ones who chose to stand their ground when others fled, offering what little comfort and knowledge they possessed, their courage a quiet beacon in the overwhelming darkness of the plague years. Their struggles and dedication remind us of the enduring human impulse to heal and to care, even in the face of the incomprehensible. As the plague intensified, the sheer volume of the dead quickly overwhelmed traditional burial practices. The familiar churchyards, once neat rows of graves, filled rapidly. The ground, already consecrated and hallowed, simply could not accommodate the ceaseless tide of new fatalities. This grim reality led to one of the most haunting legacies of the Black Death, the plague pits. These were not individual graves, but vast, hastily dug trenches, sometimes several layers deep, designed to hold hundreds, even thousands, of bodies. Imagine the scene: the frantic labor of those still healthy enough to dig, the unsettling rhythm of shovels striking earth, the quiet, desperate procession of carts laden with the dead. These pits, often located just outside town walls or in open fields, became grim markers of the pandemic's relentless sweep. From an archaeological perspective, they are extraordinary, albeit somber, time capsules. When unearthed centuries later, they offer a stark, unvarnished glimpse into the suddenness and scale of the catastrophe. Skeletal remains, often jumbled together, tell a silent story of lives abruptly cut short, of a society overwhelmed. Beyond the physical remnants, the psychological impact of the Black Death was profound and far-reaching. The omnipresent specter of death, seemingly indiscriminate in its choice of victims, shattered the medieval worldview. Faith, for many, was deeply shaken. How could a benevolent God allow such suffering? Some saw the plague as divine punishment, a manifestation of God's wrath for humanity's sins. This belief fueled fervent, often desperate, religious practices. People engaged in public confessions, joined processions of flagellants who whipped themselves in penance, and sought solace in relics and saints, hoping to avert the inescapable doom. Yet, for many others, the traditional comforts of faith offered little solace as prayers went unanswered and loved ones continued to fall. The anxieties of the time permeated every aspect of culture. Art, once vibrant and focused on spiritual narratives or chivalric tales, took on a macabre new theme: the danse macabre, or the dance of death. This allegorical motif depicted skeletons leading people from all walks of life, kings, peasants, popes, children, in a grim dance, symbolizing death's universality and its power to level all social distinctions. These chilling images served as constant reminders of mortality, reflecting a society grappling with its own fragility. Literature, too, often echoed this despair, with chroniclers meticulously detailing the horrors, their words filled with a sense of impending apocalypse. The fear also manifested in less spiritual, more desperate ways. Scapegoating became tragically common. Jewish communities, already marginalized in medieval Europe, were often blamed for the plague, accused of poisoning wells or conspiring against Christians. This led to horrific outbreaks of violence and persecution, as fear curdled into baseless hatred. Other groups, such as foreigners or beggars, also became targets of suspicion and violence. This desperate need to assign blame, to find a human cause for an incomprehensible disaster, highlights the deep psychological fracturing of society under extreme stress. Even the concept of time itself might have felt altered. Days bled into weeks, marked less by events and more by the constant count of the dead. The future became uncertain, the past a painful memory. The collective psyche of Europe was scarred, leaving an indelible mark on generations. The whispers of the apocalypse, as they were perceived, reshaped not just demographics but also beliefs, art, and the very structure of communities, forcing a profound reevaluation of life, death, and the divine. While the vast majority of the population, the common folk, bore the direct, devastating brunt of the Black Death, the nobility, too, faced the scourge, albeit often from a position of relative, though not absolute, privilege. For them, the plague transformed their grand estates and bustling courts into silent, sometimes empty, bastions of fear. Imagine, if you will, a grand medieval castle or a sprawling country estate, far removed from the cramped, unsanitary conditions of a bustling town or a humble village. When news of the plague's arrival reached these privileged ears, the immediate and most common response among the elite was flight. The belief that fresh air and distance from infected populations could offer protection drove many noble families to abandon their urban residences and retreat to their secluded country strongholds. These estates, often self-sufficient with their own farms and wells, offered a temporary sanctuary from the chaos gripping the common world. Life within these isolated noble retreats took on a peculiar quality. The usual rhythms of courtly life, the bustling servants, the constant stream of petitioners, the elaborate feasts and tournaments, would have been abruptly curtailed. Instead, fear dictated many of the routines. Strict measures might have been implemented to prevent outsiders from entering the estate, with guards posted at gates and drawbridges. Supplies would be carefully managed, and messengers from the outside world treated with extreme caution, often with their letters fumigated before being read. Despite their relative isolation, the nobility were far from immune. The plague found its way even into the most guarded halls. Servants, essential to their daily comfort, could unknowingly carry the disease from outside. Consider the poignant loss of Eleanor of Lancaster, daughter of Henry, Duke of Lancaster, who died of the plague in 1348, just one example among many high-ranking casualties. Kings, queens, and their children succumbed, demonstrating death's impartial reach even to those born to power. For the noble families, witnessing their own members fall to the same disease that ravaged the peasantry must have been a profound, unsettling experience, shattering any illusion of immunity by birthright or wealth. The measures they adopted to mitigate the plague, though often based on the same flawed medical understanding as those of the common folk, were executed with a certain grandeur. Rather than burning herbs in a tiny cottage, nobles might have entire rooms filled with fragrant braziers, perfumed with costly incense and exotic spices, believing the rich aromas would purify the air. Physicians, if they could be convinced to stay, were well compensated for their dangerous work. The quality of food, though perhaps limited by disrupted supply chains, would still have been superior, emphasizing easily digestible fare and fine wines, believed to fortify the humors. Beyond mere survival, the plague forced some profound shifts in power and social structure, even among the elite. As labor became scarce due to the immense death toll among peasants and serfs, the value of those who survived increased dramatically. This, in the long term, led to a weakening of the feudal system, as survivors demanded higher wages and greater freedoms. While the nobility clung to their status, the foundations of their power were subtly, yet irrevocably, shifting beneath them. The empty palace, therefore, was not just a physical space emptied of its usual vibrancy. It was a symbol of the profound disruption that reached every layer of medieval society. Even amidst their gilded isolation, the nobility lived with the constant knowledge of the pestilence raging beyond their walls, a stark reminder of their shared human vulnerability in the face of an invisible, relentless enemy. Their experience, though different in circumstance, underscored the universal fear and the enduring impact of the Black Death on all who lived through those harrowing years. As our journey through the shadow of the Black Death comes to a close, we return to the quiet of the present moment. We've walked through medieval villages gripped by fear, witnessed the quiet bravery of those who healed, explored the chilling remnants of plague pits, and glimpsed the anxious lives within the walls of noble estates. The story of the Black Death is not just a tale of widespread suffering, but also a testament to the enduring human capacity for adaptation, for fear, and for a quiet, stubborn resilience. It reminds us of how profoundly external forces can reshape the very fabric of society, from daily routines to deeply held beliefs, and how the echoes of such monumental events can resonate through centuries. The anxieties and adaptations of those medieval souls, as we've explored them tonight, are now distant whispers, carried on the gentle currents of history. Allow their quiet strength to settle within you, a tranquil understanding of a time long past. Let the knowledge that you are here, safe in the embrace of the present, guide you into a restful and peaceful repose.